All right, so Three Ninjas Podcast, Domino has Jones, Bobby. And right now we have on the phone, I've been wanting to talk to somebody from the South Park land for a little while, and I'm glad I got this person on the phone to actually chop it up with them and see, just to get to know some things about the show and I guess their career in general. So right now we have actor, writer, director. She's been the voice of Izzy on Digimon and Sheila Broflovsky on South Park and various other shows. We have Mona Marshall on the phone right now. Mona, how are you?
Hey.
Hello.
I'm good. I'm really good.
Now, to start with, I want to know, originally you wanted to study theater and you went to LA for that, but then somehow you found your way into voice acting. Now, how does one fall into voice acting but go to LA for theater?
Well, first of all, one does not, at least in my case, fall into voice acting.
Okay.
That would be the first thing. Second thing is I started out with a degree in English and had come out to LA because my Shakespeare teacher had told me when I wanted to study theater that LACC at that time had an outstanding theater department and program, which they did. So I came out here to study, and during that time, I, with no idea of what voiceover really was, but during that time, one of my classes in voice production was taught by a man named Robert C. Board, who really talked about the fundamentals of how to use your voice. Now, he was thinking primarily for stage and for film, but I have never forgotten what it is he taught. So I knocked around L.A. and never quite fit into whatever pigeonhole they often try and fit you in. And I was teaching at a professional school for actors, and one of my students was studying with Dawes Butler. He was a fifth grader. And I had never heard of Dawes Butler. I didn't know who he was. As it turned out, he was the voice of Yogi Bear and Quick Draw McGraw, Captain Crunch. And she kept nudging me to go to this workshop. And to keep her quiet, I went. And when I did, it opened up a whole new world for me. But one of the things that I think bugs most actors who are primarily voice actors is that there is some difference between acting and voice acting.
Okay.
Dawes used to say, if you cannot act in a 30-second commercial, maybe you can't act. So every skill I learned as an actor for theater, I have been able to apply in voiceover.
Now, how do you discover that you can do voices, though? Like you can, change the pitch or the tone of your voice to actually... Well,
part of that I learned in that voice production class, because our assignment every week was to take a classical piece, either from the Greeks or from Shakespeare, take a monologue, and be able to use the various parts of our voice.
Okay.
So we had already learned those, and if any of your people listening have gone on to my YouTube channel and heard Voices for Fun, I talk about all of that. I mean, if you really pay attention and listen, besides hopefully being entertained, I really do show you and tell you how to use those different aspects of your voice, which means there are ways to work in a higher range and also in a lower range. So, yeah, and then I studied, at the same time I was studying opera. I was also studying improvisation and used to, off the wall, had a little branch where we went into a club at that time, I think it was called the Rose. And basically people would give us 3 words and we had to connect them via, phony opera. And the great thing about opera is you're holding on a note for a long enough time to figure out what a rhyme might be.
Right.
So, and also an improv class, and I briefly, as a guest, went to Brian Cummings' workshop and realized that I could do children, and especially little boys. I have the right range for that. So a lot of my little boy voices came out of that, and I created actually a family with Margaret Elizabeth, who is 5 years old, and her older brother Mikey. That would be me, Margaret Elizabeth. Okay,
like
I can
Chex
speak
Kid.
for myself. And out of those two characters, I began to use exactly what I just told you. Part of it is knowing who your character is.
Mm.
For instance, this character who's kind of a smartass is not going to be the same as this character who is not, even though the voice placement is basically the same.
Mm.
So, you know, in doing a role like Izzy, when I auditioned for that, Izzy from Digimon, they needed somebody because he was the computer whiz who could do exposition and do it quickly.
Mm.
So if you take a little boy voice, about 10 years old, and you make sure that you're coming from an acting place where he's smart and he's quick, and you place that tone forward right behind your teeth, what you're going to get is somebody who can speak really quickly and precisely and still get a point across, okay? And he also has a very distinct sounding voice.
Right.
It's all acting.
Now,
acting and knowing how to voice.
Right. Now, I was watching the Voices for Fun, and there are like 5 methods that you used, I guess, to change the voices. One is like nasal, then there's something with the jaw. Can you explain the 5, I guess, types?
Sure. Nasal. What you're talking about is where you're directing air.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Then there's a reason why, you know, we work on breathing, because without support, you got nothing.
Right.
So this is all about you being a director of your own airflow. So nasal is directed into the nasal, right? And from that, you can do all kinds of variations. Like, so you go from doing this to a little bit of adenoidal, where you're stopping the flow into the nose, and you have adenoidal. So actually, they're really the same thing. One is where you're letting air flow to the nose, and one is where you're stopping it.
Okay.
And then you have oral, which is where you direct the air into your jaw. And if any of you know who Jimmy Stewart is, that is his natural placement was very oral.
Yeah, yeah.
So he would talk like this, you know, I'm Jimmy Stewart. And from there you can do, once again, you have the placement, then you have to think in terms of what's the character. So if you wanted to do a really snooty little voice, like, you know, this one, you would have, you know, this is all right in my jaw, dear, you know, but now I'm being very precise, as opposed to, you know, if I wanted to make a real big jaw movement, then we go into the South and we got a whole different sound now, don't we, boy? Yeah, I think so. So that's oral, and then guttural. Think in terms of that airflow being slightly stopped as it goes over your vocal folds. So you have that kind of a sound, which I've used in all kinds of games.
Right.
Oh, yeah, looking real good there. Yeah, right. And then aspirate, that is where you're barely letting that air touch over your vocal folds. So it would be something like this. Oh, yes. I understand exactly what you want. And there is where you really need to be able to articulate precisely. And then the last one, 5, there are some people, including it sounds like yourself, who have a very resonant sound. That is the type of sound or placement when you are using the very, how do I say this? It's the most resonant sound you have. It's the richest sound you have. It sounds like you have a lot of that naturally. I do not. The good part is that you'd probably be, you know, if you were wanting to do that, get a part of an announcer before I would.
Hey.
Because that's the kind of sound you hear when that wonderful, oh, today we're going to see this character and she's going to do this. How you find that, though, I learned in that voice production class, and that is you find the lowest tone you can make comfortably. And then you work on a lot of NGs, NG sounds, like ring, king. There used to be if you take your finger and put it on the side of your nose, okay, up near where you know, you'd have your glasses, okay? Now you should be able to feel this just on your own natural voice because you sound quite resonant.
Right.
But the exercise was you find the lowest voice the lowest note. So here we are. That's mine. And the exercise was, the king is groaning and roaming around the room. And once you get into that placement, then you begin to work from there. So a lot of times if I'm doing narration or I'm doing a voice that's, like computer voice, it would be using that kind of sound.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
More of an announcer sound. So there you go.
Now,
5.
Is there much room for improv when you do voiceovers, or must you stick to the script exactly?
Well, it depends. In a lot of games, there is, as long as you stay within the parameters of what they need in that line. Certainly in original animation, there's tons of room. Once again, you are following what the writer has in mind. So it's like anything else. If you were doing a part in a film, it depends. Most, in my opinion, the better directors I've worked with allow for that room, but that also means that my responsibility is to stay in character and really know what's going on in the scene. Something like, so original animation, it's a lot easier to do that. And usually I'll say, I'd like to try something. When I'm doing dubbing things like for Digimon, you have to match the sync of the characters. So there's less room unless the original script needs a lot of rewriting, in which case there's more room for that. South Park, not really, because how South Park is done is, Trey writes everything, gets up and goes into the recording room and records. So by the time I get there, usually Tuesday nights at 10 o'clock, I'm listening to his voice and sometimes watching animatic and sometimes watching full animation. So my job in that instance is to kind of work backwards. What's really going on? You got to remember, Trey is a genius. And, all this is happening in his mind and he's writing it and then he's going in and recording it. Now, sometimes that changes. By the time they get to whatever I'm doing, either Kyle's mom or I also do Butter's mom and Mrs. Clinton and Red, by the time they get to my character, the intent of the scene might have changed. So sometimes I'm doing, just the lines, but usually I'm listening to Trey. And it's very, very important as an actor to really figure out what he means by the way he's saying it.
Right.
Because, it's not just a line. It's what's behind the line. And I find that very challenging, especially if I'm having to match sync as well. And the recording engineer down there is just brilliant. So I'm very fortunate. I get a lot of support from the script supervisor, Mark, and from Bruce, who's the sound producer, because they have watched people go in, oh, this is the way this scene is happening. So they can give me really good information, input.
Now, you took over the role of Kyle's mom in 1999. Now, before you took over that role, did you watch South Park prior?
Never.
Never.
There's an interesting story behind that, and actually, technically, it was 2000, not 99.
Okay.
Because Mary Kay died in 99.
Right.
Mary Kay had called me, and she couldn't say what the show was. So, but I knew she was doing this show, and then once she got the show and it was on the air, at that time we used to do voiceover people. We used to do benefits for various things. We did, I think our first one was for AIDS. And so Mary Kay in 99, she and I were doing a benefit for vocal, and we were in the chorus. And, she would talk about the show a little bit and how generous the guys were. I think at that time her mom had been diagnosed with cancer and did not have medical insurance. And she said they had been very generous in that capacity. So everyone in my business was totally shocked because that was August.
Right.
And she committed suicide in November.
Yeah.
And an incredibly talented and very generous person. I mean, what got me through listening, because, when the call came out that these they were already in the season. And so when the call came out that, they needed replacement, the only thing that got me through listening to her voice without just falling apart was Mary Kay was the kind of person who would say to you, hey, listen, Mona, I'm not available for this, but you know what? You go. Take my blessing. And I mean it. That was exactly how she was. So, and especially November, every November I think about that.
Was it hard to make that character your own?
Being a Jew, not really.
Not really?
She had somebody in her family like that. And, well, here's the thing. You find that in voiceover, there are certain rhythms you have. I had spent a few years doing Joan Rivers at conventions and for different things. And if you listen to Joan Rivers and you listen, oh, come on, what are you doing? Get, wake up and smell the decaf. That's Joan.
Right.
Mrs. Broflowski is, oh, Kyle, I had no idea chickenpox was such a dangerous idea. I'll tell you what, darling, don't you get sick on me because I will have a fit.
Oh, my God. It's bugging me out.
I mean, now that's where placement, not rhythm, because they have very similar rhythm, and not all New York Jews sound the same either.
Right.
But Joan's placement was very throaty. Oh, really? Oh, you think so? And that wasn't just because of her age, because, when I was doing her, she wasn't, the age she was when she passed.
Right.
Kyle's, I don't think so. Kyle's mom, if you could see my face right now, that's a lot more movement and a lot more space in the mouth.
Now, South Park, the show, right, offends people on a weekly basis, right? Now, being Jewish, nothing in that show, like, does anything offend you when it comes to this show? Like, anything they write, anything that Cartman says, just anything?
You do know I'm actually writing a series that we hope to sell called Adventures of Puss and Dick.
Puss and Dick,
right?
yeah, I know that. But you don't know when it comes to people's sensibilities about their religion. That's a whole different monster.
Well, but here's the thing, honey. They skewer everybody.
Right.
There's not any. They are really after skewering hypocrisy, and and most of us are ignorant about something.
Right.
There are people that don't have any idea what a Jewish person, and not all Jews go through the same thing. Just like not all black people go through the same thing. All Mexican people don't go through the same thing. We all have differences. Part of what I think South Park does is it makes us aware so that we don't stay in ignorance. And somebody who doesn't want to be aware is sure as hell not going to be watching South Park.
Right.
True. Very true.
So, I mean, we all are ignorant about something. And basically what they're saying is, well, if you continue to be ignorant when you don't have to be, you got a problem.
Yes.
So no, am I offended by it? No. Is it necessarily my favorite kind of comedy? Not necessarily.
Okay.
Doesn't mean it's not good.
Right. You're right. Because I've been watching since I was about 8 years old, and I haven't had a problem with anything yet. They've gone at everybody that I can think of.
No, and you grew up in a time, honey, that was a lot less conservative.
Right.
I'm a little girl from St. Louis, Missouri. I'd have gotten slapped across the face many times. A lot of what's on that show.
Right.
So our consciousness has been open more, and thanks to shows like South Park. My show that I'm working on, however, deals more with the solution of those problems rather than just the problem. And it's something that's been really close to me for about 10 years. This is not it really grew out of a relationship, the idea of, people who are in a relationship, a couple relationship. But as the show has developed, and now I'm actually working with Mark Munley, who is a script supervisor for South Park, who I've known now for 20 years. And when a friend who I had met, who's a writer, who does a lot of pitching of his own stuff, said to me, you need more shock and awe. You need to work with somebody. The first person I thought of was Mark. So I called him, and he's been on board. And in 4 weeks, we've done an enormous amount of work. So, and he's around that writing, all the time. So I'm bringing one thing to the table. He's bringing something else. And thank goodness we really work well together.
All right. So let's talk about Puss and Dick, right? So Puss and Dick, A Survivor's Guide to Relationships, right? Now, this is based on your relationship between you and your husband, or like loosely based on y'all?
Oh, yeah. It was originally called Sal and Mo.
Mm.
But, what does that mean? And actually, as it's developed, remember, it actually started as a gift idea in the early 90s.
Okay.
What was happening is I saw that a lot of couples, around our age, they were getting married, they were having kids, and what happens is you spend less time, being present for one another.
Mm.
And so then, okay, well, we'll get away for a weekend, and well, then there's all that pressure, as opposed to the gift was actually 12 seduction scenarios written in recipe style that I did in the booklet. I'm also an artist, and each recipe, as it got more graphic, was surrounded by a pen and ink heart. And I wrote a song called Let My Lips Do the Walking. So that was there, and there was a black garter and a little pillow. And this is 8.5 by 11.
Right.
A little pillow with a pocket that said, how to prepare your love. So the idea would be that rather than, having all this pressure, that you take 5 minutes a day and just be present for one another. I got investors, but didn't know how to get it off the ground. But the idea of people communicating better and celebrating our sexuality never left. So, I go on in my career, doing voiceover. And back in the day before we were using iPads for our scripts. And by the way, we still use scripts at South Park.
Right.
But they're, you're only getting the segment of what you're doing. I used to, because it would take so long, especially if they were dubbing and they weren't using Pro Tools or what, it would take forever to get everything to fit. So I'd sit there and I'd draw all kinds of things. And one of the things, how do I say this? I believe that male and female energy, and this is not a new concept, it's the concept of yin yang, if you know what the symbol is.
Right, yeah.
Working together. So a lot of the artwork I have, I'm looking around my house, is erotica. Okay. It is the idea of female within male and growth. So, and that we complement each other, and yet,
right,
even in a gay relationship, usually I would think one aspect is going to be more masculine energy, one's going to be more feminine energy. So the idea, I started drawing this little penis and vagina, and I realized that but they were cute, cute.
Cute penis and vaginas.
And I realized that nobody would know what in the world Sal and Mo was. But, a nickname, especially in England, for a vagina is a puss, or for a female is a puss. And Dick is just, it's a common name for Richard.
For Richard, right.
which I will never understand, but it is. Okay?
Yeah, right.
So I thought, okay, Puss and Dick. And then the more I started developing it in the last, 5 years, I realized that what do we all have in common? Regardless of, who or what we are on the outside, we all lean more toward feminine energy or masculine energy, just like zeros and ones. So the idea that I could create a series based on, but not just a couple, because it doesn't matter. It could be two friends. It could be an employer and an employee. And then fast forward to about 6 weeks ago, I thought this was going to be one puss, one dick, but they would take on different roles. It's like if you were going to be, if you were going to be in an ensemble theater company. One day you might be doing Shakespeare, the next day you might be doing Mulder. Every week you'd be somebody else. And then because I have been open to ideas, I did this pre-pitch at a little place that I love over here called Base Camp High Horse, Dinette. And I had met some writers, like Alex Craven, who ended up really helping me. And Mark, by that time when we did the animatic, I had invited Mark in to punch up the script and to direct. It was a little animatic, and that's what I presented, along with what we call an animation Bible.
Okay.
And Alex said, "Can I see the Bible? And then how about if we meet next week?" And man, he was great. Because he said, you really should get another writer on there and develop it. And then once he did that, everything shifted. So now we have a whole little town. And right now the town is called Humanity Harbor. And so Mark and I have been working like little busy beavers on redoing the Bible. And then my original illustrator, Ani, is right now working on changing up the look.
Okay.
So this takes an enormous amount of work, but I totally believe that it can not only be funny and entertaining, but it can also help people to take a moment and think about how much communication can make all of our lives better. All you got to do, honey, is look at what's happening in our world. Look at what's happening in the disparity in this country.
Now,
so that's really the heart of what it's about. Yeah.
Now, in this PC society, do you think the public will be receptive to that kind of brash, in-your-face representation of like love?
Well, South Park hasn't done badly.
You're right, but just like
you said, first of all, it's not going to ever be a network show, nor would I want it to.
Yeah,
be.
hell no.
But if the public can accept 4 little boys who are total hellions getting into trouble, I don't see why they would have trouble accepting this, especially if the characters are cute and smart.
Yeah, you'd be surprised nowadays.
Well, the thing of it is, we all have passion about something, sweetie.
Right.
And honest to God, I believe that this is something that's working through me. I mean, I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, and part of it is I do have a good relationship with my husband. I do have a good relationship with the people I work with, and that is all about taking a moment, really listening and focusing and being open to the fact that that I might need to see things differently. Now you think for just a moment, if that was what was going on in this country, especially in politics, or in any other problematic area, from people who don't pick up their dog crap to the homeless, you tell me that there's not a need for us to begin to think outside of the box and think differently. Now, that has a lot to do with masculine and feminine energy.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
When they work together. I study Tai Chi with a Tai Chi master. God bless him. He's wonderful. And one of the things I have learned is that you look at yin energy, which is the feminine, as being weaker, only because it's within. Okay, you think about how men and women are wired,
right?
In terms of genitalia. Ours is inside, yours is outside, okay? Right. But the point is, you have more strength when you have yin working with yang than you do just by yang by itself. So, without, being preachy and so on and so forth, that's really what I'm trying to get across.
Okay, good.
So there'll be some people who say, oh, this is about genitalia, walking around. I can't do that. There's going to be a lot of smart people, because I do not think we have a lot of dumb people in the United States. I think we have a lot of ignorant people in the United States. But who isn't ignorant about something? We all are.
We all are, yeah. Yes.
My hope is that we start breaking down those walls and see what our commonality is. That's why we've got a puss. They're all pusses or they're all dicks, because that is pretty damn basic if you think about it.
Basically, if you think about it. Now, since your voice is your livelihood, what routines or steps do you do to take care of it on like a daily basis?
Well, I do exercise every single day, because so much of that is about breathing.
Okay.
So I do yoga, I do Pilates, I do Tai Chi. And I try and walk almost every day. When you have a dog, you know that you have to do that.
Right.
But one of the things I have noticed is I'm very careful about going to parties and events, because the tendency is to be talking like this because there's a lot of people. I try not to go places where they're smoking. I don't drink, not because I don't think it's wonderful, as long as you don't get drunk on your ass every day.
Right.
But it's just not something I do well with. So I try and watch my food intake. I don't eat a lot of sugar. So basically, you live as healthy a lifestyle as you can. But I try not to be in places where I'm going to be talking like this a lot, because after a while, it really just puts a strain on your vocal cords.
Right. Now, how often do you stay in that creative headspace where you're like listening to everyday voices and trying to craft different characters in your head? I guess I want to say.
It never stops.
Never stops? Is that annoying though? After a while?
It can be if it can be if I don't take breaks.
Right.
It's one of the reasons why we still have a very healthy sexual relationship. Thank you very much.
Hey.
I'm so glad I married a half Italian. But it helps. It does. And, we have that in common, and I'm grateful for that. But I try to do things that I won't go into detail about in terms of being of service outside of myself, and that helps.
Mm-hmm.
I read to children, and that's very creative, so that it's not so much that the voices stop, but if they're directed in a positive way, then they become positive instead of negative.
Right.
And also, like on this project, it doesn't stop, but it's not interfering.
Okay.
Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this podcast right now.
Right.
I can't do that. I've got to think.
Right.
So all of that helps. And I love the idea of sharing some of the knowledge and some of the knowledge that's been helpful to me and some of the technique that's been helpful to me. I love being able to share that with fans or with people who are interested.
Now, as a voice actor, what was your first gig?
I think my very first gig, let me think about this, because I'm never sure whether it was radio, and it was, I think it went like this. I think my first gig was either commentary about the Buddy Holly story, or it was doing a Scottish maid on Heartbeat Theater that Dawes directed. And then my first major gig that was SAG was doing the voice replacement for Alexander in Bergman's Fanny and Alexander, and that was really a trip. Playing a live action little boy who I thought was going to be seduced at one point. That was really I remember they showed us the film first, and I'm going, really?
Yeah.
It's going to be something I'm going to have to talk to somebody about. If you know the film as it happens, he does not get seduced, but he's a very introspective little boy, and the fact that Bergman really liked what we had done with the dub made me feel good. And I was dating Sal then, so Sal's watching the film. He's looking at me. He's going, "That really came out of you?
Right.
Who am I dating?" So that was a lot of fun.
Now, how did you meet your husband?
I'm sorry?
So how did you meet your husband, Sal?
Oh my God.
Oh, it's a story.
I met my husband because I'm a very loyal, loving wife, even to my first husband.
Okay.
My first husband, God bless him, was, I think he was bipolar.
I'm with you.
But, there you go.
I got the same story.
Hopefully if you're talking about yourself, you have good meds.
No, he doesn't.
And this, that's only a guess on my part. But
You're right.
He had this pattern where he would get very enthusiastic about something, and I was the primary breadwinner. He would get very enthusiastic about something, and then he would drop it. So he had difficulty hanging on to a job. And he was a very bright man. And I had met him in college. It was my first husband. So he had gotten involved in a personal business and was very enthusiastic. He liked the fact that it applied spiritual principles to a business set. And I thought, so finally, being a supportive wife, I went with him to one of these meetings. And he was dead on. And of course, being the person I am, it was exactly the opposite. I got involved to be a supportive wife.
Right.
And he, as his pattern, he dropped it. And by that time, we had other people that were involved and so on and so forth. And his sister-in-law had come into town and was looking for a small business that she could start without it costing a lot of money. So I brought her to this meeting. Now, let me backtrack. I have been a club singer. I've written my own stuff. I am a firm believer in that if you make a commitment to somebody, you live up to that commitment.
Right.
And there's no way in hell I would ever have cheated on my husband. That's not to say that during the years I was married to my first husband, I was attracted to other men. I certainly was. When you're out performing and guys are, telling you how wonderful you are, it's easy to, buy into that rather than realize it's a line and you're committed.
Right.
So I never acted on that. And I used to be very attracted to very intelligent men, or, guys that were. So I had been talking to the woman who's been a spiritual guide for me for many, many years, and I knew the marriage was deteriorating. And she kept telling me, you must either accept that your first husband, obviously there was no second husband, your husband is never going to change.
Right.
And accept that fact, or you have to make a decision to move on. So I was getting ready to ask him for a separation.
Mm-hmm.
My friend suggested to me that I wait until my sister-in-law left town.
Okay.
I went to this meeting, took one look at Sal Ionati, and oh my God.
Smitten.
I was more than smitten. I'm an artist, and he has this face with the long jaw, and I wanted to touch his face.
Right.
So at that point, I knew it was time to go home and ask my first husband for a divorce. Not a divorce, a separation. So I did.
Oh, yeah, you gotta go.
I said, well, no, I did not say it was not that. It was blatant. I said, I think we should separate. He said, okay.
Okay.
Damn, that was it.
And by the way, I had heard rumor that he was thinking about having an affair with somebody, unbeknownst to me. So I was not feeling too bad about this.
Right.
And so I said, okay, then you have to move out. He said, why? I said, because I pay the rent.
Goddamn
so
right.
It took him about 3 weeks. In the meantime, Sal was calling me every morning, and we would just talk. That's all we did was talk. And we got to know each other, and then my then husband moved out, and about a few weeks later was already moved in with another woman. So at that
resourceful
point,
guy.
I thought, okay.
See what it is now.
So that is how I met my first husband.
Right. Shout out to Sal. I like Sal.
Slightly naughty, too.
Right. Hey, it is what it is. It happens to the best of us.
But I will say this. I really needed to know who he was before and this is just me, Yeah. I did not grow up in the age of, oh, wow, I like you, you're attractive, let's screw.
Right.
I wanted to make sure that it was somebody, that I really cared about and who cared about me. So.
Oh, that's sweet love. Puss and dick. That's love.
You betcha, baby. Yeah. It comes from love. But the thing of it is all of us can come from that place.
Right.
I mean, seriously, you think about it. You take a moment to really get to know somebody, there'd be many fewer divorces.
Right, yeah. So many.
And a lot happier marriages.
Shut up, man.
Bob, you okay?
Fine.
You okay over there, man? All right. Now,
I wish I had a tape of you guys right now.
Nah, because when she said about the her husband being bipolar, I had a wife that was bipolar, so I know exactly what that feels like.
Oh man, I can't.
It's hard.
Yeah,
if you were dealing with somebody who is bipolar, and see, I didn't even know that. I mean, you got to remember, you're going back a lot of years. Right. Bipolar, I think more people knew about bipolar because there were so many actors.
Yeah.
Once I realized what that pattern was, later on I realized that was probably what was going on. But I also had a sister and a father. My father was, his background was, he was Lithuanian Jew. I mean, he wasn't from Lithuania. His parents were.
Okay.
He had bipolar genes. My sister had bipolar genes. Her children and her grandchildren are all bipolar. But by the time she had her children, there was medication available. People knew what it was. My poor sister, nobody knew why she was having tantrums and why she was, why she couldn't cope. And, as a matter of fact, she did get help. She did lead a somewhat productive life. We never had a relationship, but her children and their children at least have the awareness and the means to get help. But that's a terrible disease to have to live with.
Right.
And once again, it's a mental illness, so people are very non-accepting. Goes back to what am I trying to do with Adventures of Puss and Dick? Trying to at least give people an awareness so that we're not about excluding people, but about including them in the society and being able to understand and help. Not everybody fits into a little freaking box.
Right. Now, speaking on bipolar and things like that, are like voice actors allowed to have a bad day because everything you're going through comes through the mic and, you know, you have to obviously use your voice and some days you're just not there mentally?
That's really a question for a producer. I have never shown up to a session not able to put aside what's going on with me and be present.
Okay.
Now, I did have one incident. I had knee surgery, and I was due to see my doctor that afternoon because it kept oozing. And I got myself to the studio. Fortunately, it was, you know, I was the only one involved, so it wasn't like, oh my gosh, there's a whole group depending on me as well. And it was, I think it was the director was being Skyped in from, I think, Korea. And I got to the session, and the engineer took one look at me and said, "Oh, I think you need to go home." And at first I didn't want to, but I was in such pain that I hate to say this, but I literally agreed to go home and we rescheduled. And literally, fortunately, it wasn't a long distance, but I oozed. There was ooze as I got back to the car. How I made it home, I don't know. And I had already arranged for a friend of mine to take me to the doctor, and they put me in the hospital that day. It was an infection. But, you know, I was taught early on in theater that A, anybody can be replaced. B, this is a privilege to be able to use what you love to earn your living. You know, so, you know, and directors and producers, unless you're under the gun. Oh my God, I got a South Park story to tell you. Do you remember the season where Kyle's mother broke the internet?
Yeah. Yes.
That was very rough. I had a sinus infection. Trey was also sick, and a lot of, you know how things are. You know, you're working closely with a lot of people, and they work long hours. There was a lot of people were sick, and I was called in early to do lines for her. I think. All right, so their new week begins on a Thursday, and it ends on Tuesday night. So that Thursday, I'd gone in thinking, I think it was either Thursday or. I think it was Thursday. And I was doing a lot of shouting, and I had a sinus infection. If I shout and the sinus infection is too far in, I can lose my voice. So I did the best I could, knowing that we can always pick up lines, but do the best I could, thinking, oh, they won't call me in until Saturday. I got a call from my agent that they needed me Friday afternoon. I said, Arlene, I'm really afraid I'm not going to have the voice. So they would have gotten somebody to do a rough, but they decided, well, let's wait till Saturday. So I rested and did everything in my power, took a lot of emergency, took a lot of tea, everything I could to get my voice in shape. So Saturday morning I show up, and Trey's there too, not feeling well.
Right.
So we did it. And then anything we needed to pick up, we picked up Tuesday. But that, I got to tell you, because that is such a tight schedule, you're talking about Tuesday night airing the next day.
The next day, yeah.
There is no wiggle room there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
With the job that I had to reschedule, there's wiggle room, you know. On a game, there is no job in town that has this kind of deadline. None.
Yeah, because South Park is pretty fast.
None.
Yeah.
A quick turnaround.
I was gonna ask that because a lot of times, like, something will happen during the week, and South Park will pick up on it on the next new episode. Like, it could happen maybe Sunday or Monday, and they're already up on it. So, when that happens, are there a lot of like rewrites and just like schedule conflicts with certain voice actors, or do you guys just is that
you have to
your
remember,
contract?
Who's going to book me besides South Park at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night?
I don't know. You never know. I don't know. I don't live in Hollywood. I don't know what happens.
No. And here's the thing: when South Park is in session, I don't go out of town.
Okay.
It used to be when the schedule was different that I would go back to Philadelphia during Thanksgiving. But when the guys got married and they started having their own kids,
right,
the schedule changed. But they used to record me in Philadelphia for that time. And also, remember, Chef was recorded out of New York.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. He very rarely was in L.A., so they knew that they could do that. It's just it's so much easier when you don't have to do that. And now that my father-in-law has passed away, we don't go back to Philly anyway, and they're always off on Thanksgiving.
Okay.
Which is nice. You know, I mean, you got to remember, everybody who started, 22, 23 years ago, they were all, in their early 20s.
Yeah.
Now so many of the people working that show are married and have children and have family, so they have week breaks in between, which is nice.
Okay.
I mean, I think they have 2 or 3 1-week breaks in between the 10 shows.
Okay. Now, do you have a dream role that you want to play?
Yes.
What's that?
The many aspects of Puss and Puss in Boots.
Just want to play the Puss.
I'm not joking.
No,
That would be one
I know you're serious.
great job.
Uh-huh.
I'm being serious. I want to write and I want to produce my own show with a wonderful group of people and do a lot of the characters on it.
Okay. So that's your passion project right now.
My Puss and Dick. Huh?
so that's your passion project at this moment.
No, that is my passion project for the rest of my life. Not to say I don't like doing a lot of other stuff. I do. I've got a thing coming up, a game, and the character is wonderful. She's mad. I'm playing a mad woman.
Can you speak on it?
So yeah, I mean, I love doing what I'm doing. But you asked me what my dream job is. That's it. I mean, in writing these characters and working these characters out with Mark and with our illustrator, it's exciting. It's really exciting to because I'm thinking, I want to keep the cast down to people who can do multiple voices. Because to me, that's an actor's dream. You kidding me? Doing multiple voices on a show?
Right.
It's the best.
Now, are you able to speak on the game that you're working on at all, or no?
This game, yes. It's called Moons of Madness. And there's a couple other ones that are in, and there's a few guest shots on a Disney thing I can't talk about. But what I know about Moons of Madness is it seems very, very well written. I'm not sure what company it is, but when I went in to do her the first time, I asked if I could talk about it. And it's being directed by Rob King, who's just really wonderful. I've known him for years. And, it's wonderful to play a mad woman.
Right.
Basically, I'm trying to kill my son.
Sounds like a game I won't play. I'm down. Now,
one of the most fun games I ever did, though, was doing Helga on Ratchet and Clank. I loved her. That's what you're going to do now. Yeah. Come here, let me look at you.
That's fucking insane. I didn't know that. I gotta do more research. I'm stupid. So now,
You're not stupid.
I know. But another thing I wanted to ask. Now, you do the voices for fun on YouTube. Now, do you teach classes outside of doing that on YouTube, or?
I do on Skype, not Skype, on what's it called?
Hangout.
I do. That's what I wanted you guys to use.
If
you go online,
Zoom.
I do it online.
Oh, Zoom.
Zoom. Thank you so much. I'm glad one of us has a mind for this afternoon. I do it on Zoom, and it actually works out really well. You have to remember that the class I teach is about production. This is not a class you want to take every week.
Right.
It's a class you might want to take 2-3 times a year.
Okay.
Because what I want to teach you is how to do stuff that you can use every single day.
Okay.
And then you play with that. I had a guy, just wonderful. He was in the Army, 23 years old. Really didn't have much training in this area, but boy, he had a really good ear, which meant he could do impressions, which you often need, because a lot of times you'll start with an impression and then riff from there.
Right.
This guy was so good, and I encouraged him. I said, come up with 5 characters, work on the placements for them, and start doing it as stand-up. Start using them as stand-up, because that's a good way to get seen, and a good way, if you're not being hired. And plus, when he gets out of the Army, he was a Marine. He was a Marine. It's a good thing to then really pursue, because as a Marine, he could pursue it a little bit in terms of going, when they go out, he can do stand up, because they have open mic.
Mm-hmm.
So I really encourage that. It's wonderful. Either that or get with a good improv group.
Right.
Or class.
Okay.
Where are you guys from?
Connecticut.
New York? Connecticut. Oh, Connecticut. That's nice. You're not far from New York.
Yeah,
No,
it's an hour train ride. It's not that far.
Yeah.
So are you guys all into doing voiceover or acting? Are you an ensemble group? What are you?
Basically just 3 podcasters. We do I suggest that you never listen to our show.
Yeah.
But we do like voices every now and then. We're pretty animated. We're pretty, out there and wayward group of black men. I don't know how else to put it. We're very animated and out there. We trying to ruffle some feathers, I guess.
So let me ask you a question. Can you do any white guy voices?
Yeah, on command, probably not.
My close friend across the street, Xavier X. She and I walk our dog.
Right.
Now, she is a black woman from the South originally. And every once in a while, we'd be walking, and X will come on with a white Valley girl like you would not believe. And she is not an actor, honey.
Right.
She's not. So we do lots of play together. Sometimes they're 2 little black girls. Sometimes they're nasty little white teenagers.
Right.
We have a lot of fun.
Yeah, we do
And
different
that's a lot of it, too. You got to have fun.
Yeah,
Got to have fun.
it's a lot that goes on in the studio. So
Yeah, we don't think we're getting anywhere.
now
I think I can tell that from here.
it's a lot going on. Now,
We definitely have fun.
Yeah, you would definitely have fun. Now, does Puss and Dick have a date that is coming out, or is it still in production right now?
No, because remember, we're in the stages of developing a strong enough pitch and Bible, because we got to then go to the people, right? The people that actually say, here's money to do this. And so I've been very fortunate. Like I said, Alexander Craven, who's a guy, I just met. We were talking one day at this place that I hang out. He gave me some really good advice, and he's been kind of mentoring us along, Mark and I. And we're hoping that we have strong enough pitch that somebody says, okay, here's money to do X amount of them, and we'll get it on air. So you guys out there, keep your fingers crossed, because I think this could really be a lot of fun.
We're looking forward to it. So now, Mona, where can everyone find you on the Instagrams and the social medias and YouTube and things like that?
On Instagram, let me see, because I want to make sure I don't screw this up, or my media consultant may kill me. I have my little card right here.
We'll plug it in.
Okay,
We got it.
Thank you. Please plug me.
Yeah.
Plug me as much as you want. Okay, on Instagram, it's Mona Marshall Voices.
Okay.
And on Twitter, it's the Mona Marshall.
Okay. How about YouTube?
And you can also go to my website, which is, and there you can actually, your fans can write if they want. I sell autographed pictures, and they can find out about, one-on-one lessons. And that's monamarshall.net.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Mona, I enjoyed this conversation. I really appreciate you for all the laughs that you've given us in this episode in South Park for these many, many years. It was an honor and a privilege to talk to you.
Well, same at you. I appreciate what you guys are doing. Keep having lots of fun and getting it out there.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
You have a good
You're
day,
welcome.
all right?
Take care now. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.